Good evening, all. Welcome to tonight's I'mPossible conversation, the conversation where ordinary people share their extraordinary stories. Tonight, my guest is Michael Owen, and he's one of my most favorite blog writer. Actually, wait, I'm going to invite him in the same time, and I'll do the introduction to. Can't seem to find him online here. All right. Yes, Michael Owen is a man in the 50 odd. Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
can you
Thank
hear
you for
me?
joining us. Yes, I can.
Good, good.
Everything's working perfect. Yeah, I was just introducing you about the man behind the 50 odd, my
Did you say
most favorite
did,
blog.
did you say nice things then?
Of course, I did.
Okay. I've got a bit of a cough, so I sound a little bit strange, but it is me.
And you are founder of Angelfish
Yeah,
and Always Wear Red
yeah,
fashion brand.
yeah.
Is there anything else do our listeners need to know about you?
Well, I suppose I'm on a revolving chair, so I'm just going to keep doing this. I do three things really. So Angelfish is a brand communication business. Always Wear Red is a clothing brand, which has been going for about 3 years. Angelfish has been around for a long time, 12 years maybe. And 50 odd is a 50 odd is a blogging platform that I started when I was 50 years old, and every day since I was 50, which is about 550 days, 600 days maybe, I've written a story about what the world looks like to me from here. So that's what 50 odd is. So they're all those three things are what keep me going outside of the family. Those are the three things that I do.
Do you know how many blogs you've written so far
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be about
as of
between
today?
500 and 600. I don't know exactly, but between five and
It's
six
400.
hundred. But there you go.
It's 467,
Is it? Have you
including
counted them
today's,
all?
of course.
Okay. So the answer is 467. There you
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, what made you to start writing 50 blogs, 50 odd?
Oh, it's just a creative outlet, really. I'm a bit of a waffler. I'm a bit of a storyteller. And normally I'd be telling stories about other people because my job is a brand builder. So my job is to work with companies to help them to find and tell their story. That's generally what I do. But I've got little stories in my head of my life, which is getting longer by the day, of course. So at the beginning, what I did, Suki, was I just dug back into my past and started relaying little tales about me. And now I either do that or something happened to me today that I write about. So it's nothing more than I just spit out little stories that resonate with me to see if they resonate with other people. But I have to say, I don't write them for other people. I don't want that to sound horrible. I write them for me. It's just like a little Tourette's-like creative outlet for me. So there you go.
And because you write it for you and you publish it, and but then you got so many followers because like what you're writing is resonate with other people too.
Well, it would seem so. It would seem so because people globally now, there's between 5 and 10,000 people. It's nearer 10 than 5 now, who within a year and a half have picked up on me chattering on, and they read what I write. Sometimes I just tell them the music I'm listening to, and they have a listen as well. Sometimes I tell them what happened when I went to Marks and Spencer's, and they have a read about that. But you're quite right. It's just stuff that happens to me. At the beginning, it was interesting because as a 50-year-old guy, one or two people I knew and one or two people who I didn't know spoke to me about what I was writing, suggesting that, it really sounds like you've got your act together and you've got some really clear thoughts on things. And that, that couldn't be further from the truth. My head's all over the place most of the time. I just happen to be spitting out little notions as they happen. And that's all that 50 odd is. It's just little ideas, chapters of my life that happen each day.
So you write them every morning, or when do you get the inspiration?
Normally, I write them on a Sunday morning. I'll write. between 5 and 10 on a Sunday morning. But the
Mm-hmm.
concepts pre-exist. So I'll write stories in kind of note form. It might be one word or one sentence or one notion
Mm-hmm.
every day or two. You know, there may be 5 or 6 that will happen today even. And then on a Sunday, I go back through the notes and I'll write the stories about those things. I write them straight into the blog in draft form. That's the most efficient way to do it. So that's what I do.
Mm-hmm. So when you said when you write them in a draft form,
Yeah.
uh, is it always on a computer? Because like people use lots of notebooks and then they have little notebooks within them all the time, and then when they pick up a little inspiration, they write it down.
No, it's normally an email to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I normally just email myself. That's not the most efficient way of doing it, I know, but I'll sit down and sometimes there's an email to me from me about something that's happened, and then I'll just transfer it across, and then I expand it into a story. Sometimes sometimes an idea is based around an illustration or a diagram,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's slightly different because I'll be scribbling on bits of paper or in my notebook, and then that becomes part of the story itself. But normally, it's an email that I send to myself.
Mm-hmm. So like so far you've written 467 blogs, little
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
Like which ones stand out for you? Like you really want to write down, and you were thinking like I would like to write it down, like make it a blog.
It's an interesting, it's an interesting question. There are 1 or 2 stories I've not written yet
Uh-huh.
because I don't feel it doesn't feel right. It's about a lot of it's about timing.
Mm-hmm.
All the stories tend to fall into categories. They're either entertaining, or maybe they inspire someone to do something, or maybe they're just a little bit serious, or maybe they're emotional. But to
Mm-hmm.
answer your question about which ones spring to mind, it's almost always the emotional ones, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The most significant story I've written in terms of how it affects people is called Connect. And the reason it's significant is because even though it's just words on a page, I find it difficult to read out. I've talked about the story Connect in more than one. I sometimes do presentations or talks, and I'll read the first half of the story, and I get a little bit upset and emotional about the second half of the story. So I
Mm-hmm.
ask somebody else to read the second half of the story, and invariably they're getting upset and wide-eyed and teary-eyed before they get to the end of the story. So the story Connect is a very interesting story because all I did was pick up a fact, which was a third party fact, something that was going on over there, and
Mm-hmm.
reframed it with something that's going on for us over here. But that story, Connect, is a very interesting one because it's a story about the human condition, I think.
Okay. Because I remember reading lots of your going through your blogs, but I just don't remember by its name, and I
Well,
really hope. Mm-hmm.
you may or may not. I mean, it's when you're writing a blog every day, people
Mm-hmm.
follow you and then unfollow you, and then strangely sometimes they'll follow you again because sometimes it's just too much. You know, reading something that some fella's written every day is I wouldn't say it's a commitment, but for some people it's become a habit. For a while, if I was late, I would get told off by a small number of people if I didn't
Mm-hmm.
actually write a story. I never miss a day, but sometimes it's later in the day.
Yeah.
But you know, it's normally 8 o'clock in the morning, as you know. That's normally when it
It's
happens.
801 and
And I'm
802.
sure, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 2 stories ahead at the moment, so
Mm-hmm.
it will be 8 o'clock tomorrow morning and the day after. But beyond that, I'm not sure. I'll
All right,
probably catch
okay.
up.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because I usually go to work at 8, so leave
Yeah,
house about 7:15, and then as soon as I go in, I
yeah,
check, and then oh
yeah.
no, nothing's in there.
Well, you for the next 2 days, you're fine. Let me think. What's tomorrow's about? The day after tomorrow's is a bit
Don't
weird.
tell us.
No, it's too weird. What day after tomorrow?
All right, okay. So, um, like your blog, it has if a man lives for 1,000 months, he will die aged 83 years, and you've
Yeah.
changed. Is that okay if I call it like change your life direction? Is it or what? How would you describe it?
Well, what
Like
I did was
you've gone through whole change.
yeah, but you know, it doesn't seem that big a deal to me. I mean, if a person thinks that they're just one career, then in my opinion, they're thinking wrong anyway,
Hmm.
because you can be as many careers as you like. Of course,
Hmm.
it's harder when you start, but it's not as hard as moaning because you're staying where you are. So if you want to change, you can change. And if you want to find an excuse not to change, you can do that as well, of course. But it's
Hmm.
completely up to you. But I'd rather be somewhere I wanted to be than somewhere I didn't want to be. And of course, you know, the vast majority, including me, have got mortgages to pay. But if you
Hmm.
want to move, get a plan. Get a plan together and move. It might take you a year or two or three, but just don't moan, you know. I was unhappy, so I was running businesses which were profitable and doing okay for 14 years, and we peaked out at a seven-figure turnover, and we were still at a seven-figure turnover when I decided to start to slowly close
Hmm.
them down. And over a period of about 6 months, I started to shut the businesses down
Hmm.
to do something completely different because that's what I wanted to do. And luckily, I had the support of my family behind me,
Hmm.
and that's what I did.
Yeah, but the question is, what triggered you to do it?
What triggered the change was I didn't know why I was doing it anymore.
Uh-huh.
There's a difference
But
between
was
what you're
it
doing and
just
why.
one day, like you were sitting down and then like, actually, do you know what? I'm not happy, or were you just actually, I am feeling I want to do something else?
It wasn't one day, it was a series
Hmm.
of days that happened within a period of maybe a month or two.
Hmm.
And wasn't excited by the next chapters, whether I defined them or not, because in business, sometimes you define the chapters very clearly and sometimes they're defined for you. And
Hmm.
for a while, I didn't mind either way. You know, if I went through a phase of business that was unpredictable or thrust upon me, I was excited about how to get through it. Or if I'd
Hmm.
set a plan and achieved the plan, I was excited because I'd achieved the plan. But you can be climbing the wrong mountain. So I
Hmm.
was climbing the wrong mountain, so I just changed. But to answer your question, it was over a period of a couple of months, and then I had to develop a plan quickly to change. But it didn't. It doesn't feel quickly because if you pull the camera back and look at your life, arguably there's no such thing as quickly because you're only here for 1,000 months, then you die. So what's quickly? I mean, you get an 80-year period in goodness knows how many million years of the existence of this planet. So if you're not happy, you can
Hmm.
change. Stop moaning and change. You know, that's what I would suggest to people. Because oftentimes, most of the time, the only person who's in your way is you.
Yeah, and then you only die once, so.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point. You'd only die once, but interestingly, when you do die, you can see two lives: the life you led and the life you wish you'd led. So I would encourage people, if they want to, it makes no difference to me. I don't care, but try and make it so you see one life. I don't mean to
Uh-huh.
sound flippant, but it's not as if I'm trying to twist people's arm or encourage them. But all I'm doing, and it just seems like the sensible thing to do, is live a
Hmm.
life that I want to live, not that somebody else has imposed upon me.
Yeah.
Because that would lead me to be moaning, and I just don't want to moan.
Hmm. So you just encourage and support people if they want like to change.
But it's not. It's probably I'm changing a little bit, so it's not as general as that. Because
Hmm.
there are some people who don't want to change and who are just moping about, and I don't. You know, there are many reasons for that, and I'm not trying to. Nothing is binary, in my
Hmm.
opinion. By the way, and sometimes in conversations like this, we look for binary answers and shorthand. But which is what I'm about to do now. As a general rule, if someone doesn't want to change themselves, then no, I won't be interested in encouraging or helping them to change.
Yeah, but like if you think sometimes, um, because I tend to see people, they want to do lots of things, and
Yeah,
but the fear is holding them back,
yeah. I mean,
and people need a little bit encouragement, a little bit like push, not like hard one, like you have to do it type of thing, but it's just like little bit.
yeah, it's interesting. There's a difference between knowing how to do something and
Hmm.
knowing what to do,
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to do it. Because as I've got older, I have to admit I'm less tolerant of people who say, I want to do something. Because if I stick to the strictest definition of the term, no, you don't. Because if you wanted to be doing it, you'd be doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
if someone says, I really want to go to the gym to either lose weight or gain weight, I'll go, well, do it then.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it, really. But again, I'm not as steely and as forthright as I'm being with you. This is shorthand. You know, if somebody does genuinely want assistance in this, that, or the other, then I will definitely help them. You know, generosity,
Mm-hmm.
actually, just so you know, was the key to me escaping my old world. In many ways, generosity was the thing that released me from where I was. Because being generous was a big part of my strategy for escaping my old world and starting a new one. I basically
Mm-hmm.
joined as many boards as I could. I supported as many people as I could in their business to actually
Mm-hmm.
test whether I was any good, because I'd
Yeah.
forgotten. Because when
Mm-hmm.
I ran businesses, this is going on to a slightly different subject, but when I ran businesses, I wasn't on the delivery end anymore. I was just building teams that delivered things. So I had to get
Mm-hmm.
back to the coal face to work out if I could deliver things. And my insecurities led me to do that for free for a while until I worked out
Mm-hmm.
that hopefully most of the time I was quite good at what I did.
Right. Sounds good.
So I'm not a horrible
Um,
selfish thing, but you know, I do
I
like
know
to work
you're
with people
not.
who want to help themselves.
Yeah, of course. Um, like, because has your change brought you happiness?
Yeah, in it, only because I was kind of trapped before with a wage bill that was approaching £1 million, and overheads that pushed it over £1 million in a business that brought in,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, let's say 1.5 million. But it was like, why would you do that? Because it didn't make sense to me. I wasn't very good at scaling it beyond that point, actually. I hadn't found the right people at my side to help me to do that. Some of the people that were at my side I really liked, and some of the people at my side I really didn't like. But I had to cleanse myself and find a new set of objectives and actually a new tribe. I talk a lot about finding a new tribe because
Mm-hmm.
this is going back to your question about being happy. My old friends, my friends at the time
Yeah.
were like me, earning plenty of money and doing things. They went to work and then they
Mm-hmm.
went home and then they
Yeah.
spent the money that they earned.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I shut all that down to go into a world that didn't make me any money, and
Mm-hmm.
I was doing something I'd never done before, some of
Mm-hmm.
my old friends actually thought I'd gone a bit bonkers and we
Mm-hmm.
didn't relate in the same way. So I needed to meet new people who were doing things in a similar way to me and had a similar mindset to me. So I very quickly tried to work out who those people were and where those
Mm-hmm.
people were. And then I
Mm-hmm.
buddied up with them and learned from them.
Yeah. It's more about shared values, isn't it?
It is
It
definitely
is. It is
about
shared
that, yeah.
values. I would say like more than a mindset, because I have friends like have a same interest and same value,
Yeah.
and it is completely different. Do you know Ian Farah?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He just sent me a
Angel.
message when we were
Yeah,
chatting.
yeah. He's asking if you always wear red socks are better than industry
I
angel
better than him.
socks.
Well, he mentioned this on social media, and
Hmm.
on the day he mentioned it, I was wearing his socks.
Oh, were you?
That's the
How did it
truth.
feel?
Awful. No, not really. They're fine.
Yeah,
They're fine.
yeah.
They're fine.
Okay.
No, they're good. They're good.
Hmm.
Better is very, very subjective.
Yeah, exactly. So, we've just talked about like, because in your blog it says the man who stopped waiting
Yeah.
and started doing.
Yeah.
So, and lots of people ask you, what were you waiting for? And you
Yeah.
answered that probably hundreds of times.
No, not hundreds of times, but the question is always the same, answered
Mm-hmm.
the same, which is, I don't know. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
with most people, it's the same. They're waiting for something which is never going to happen, which is probably a guarantee. because they feel safer where they are
Mm-hmm.
than the risk of being somewhere new. But somewhere new is exciting and interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
to be still where you are and dissatisfied and 3, 6, 7 years older is worse. It really is. Because I in my younger life, relationships I was in, I stayed in them too long. I stayed in the business I was doing for too long, probably 3 years too long. And it made me destructive and grumpy and disconnected. And I think destructive is the most valid word because I wasn't happy there. And it is a little
Mm-hmm.
bit like, if I'm honest, I've been in relationships with girls in the past where if I wasn't happy and I wasn't brave enough to leave, I'd probably be
Mm-hmm.
mischievous or naughty or just cheeky enough to try and break it rather
Mm-hmm.
than, so it broke itself, which is very cowardly.
Right,
But
okay. Rather
all of
than
this
just
is
being
the,
honest.
that's right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting the words that we use because honesty, dishonesty, cowardice, and bravery, they sound like absolutes. And I think that it's more complex than that because I wasn't being honest with myself. But interestingly, maybe I was. I understood the truth, but I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
brave enough to go. And that's been the same in relationships I've had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it was certainly true to a degree of some of the businesses that I've built in the past. So I have to watch
Okay.
that.
Mm-hmm. So are you, because now you got Always Wear Red,
Yeah.
which is absolutely fantastic brand, isn't it?
Well, it's a it's a constantly evolving thing.
Uh-huh.
I've committed the worst sin possible from a brand level, which is I've shifted what the business is for. Its purpose has changed. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
really do that, but I just had to because how I was feeling about the brand fundamentally changed. So I just changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the brand at the beginning it was focusing on the relationship between a person and what they wore and how confident they felt, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And about, and that's what I did for 2 or 3 years. And I built a great little collection of some of the best, well, not, it was the best you could make.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we did was the best of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 years in, I fell in love with a new category of product, which is hand knits. So all I'm doing going forward is hand knitted jumpers. That's all I'm doing from next year under the Always
Mm-hmm.
Wear Red brand.
Right. So, because I've seen the Seen First and Remembered Longest.
Yeah.
That was your very first slogan type of thing, is that right?
It wasn't the slogan that we bolted
Uh-huh.
onto the brand. That was
Uh-huh.
confidence is a color. But
Yeah.
it was a little bit. My insecurities made the brand a little too complex in the early days. It was all about the creation of confidence, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Creating. It's that feeling we get when we're wearing something that we know is the
Mm-hmm.
best it can be.
Yeah.
But some of the rules of being an exceptional brand is narrowing the focus. And my focus was too broad because I did too many products using too many suppliers, and I did everything the hardest way possible. So to
Mm-hmm.
create a tie or a pocket square, what you might do is find a material and find a tie maker. So there's two variables. What I did was design a silk, get the best silk maker in the world to weave the silk just for me, then get one of the
Okay.
best tie maker, then get one of the best tie makers in the world, a different company, to make the
Mm-hmm.
ties just for me. So it was a bit complex. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sneezing. But it was all very difficult. It was all brilliant, but just too complex. So I had to pin down just one area of working. And
Mm-hmm.
as I say, the product which I found and still find very interesting is hand knits because knitted product just lacks romance for me because
Mm-hmm.
it's pressing a button on a machine. And yeah, it's all very clever, but it's not for me.
Yeah. And the permission to pause.
The permission to pause is a neat,
Mm-hmm.
alliterative message around what I'm doing now because
Mm-hmm.
the jumpers that I'm creating are it's the jumper you wear when you're doing nothing because when you're doing nothing it can mean everything
Mm-hmm.
because we're in a world where there's always something to do. Let's make sure that when we're off, we're
Mm-hmm.
doing something that either regenerates us or recharges us. And I'm creating these, the first shape of jumper that we're doing, Suki, are these 11-inch collar, hand knitted, huge jumpers that you've seen that are
Yeah.
knitted from between 1 and 1.5 kilograms of the best merino wool I can find. So they're just
Mm-hmm.
massive. But the permission to pause thing is basically saying, look, when you've got one of these jumpers on, just be off, just do nothing. If you're being a dad or a mum, because they're gender
Mm-hmm.
neutral,
Yeah.
these jumpers, be the best dad, or be the best mum that you can be. Because if you're buggering about on your phone when you're meant to be with your kids, you're not being the best dad you can be. Turn your phone off.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm trying to say. Because the permission to pause thing, which is what my brand is saying, always wear red, is because we often don't give ourselves permission to pause, if you like.
Yeah.
But
And I
the
remember,
actual
sorry.
the actual sorry, Suki, the actual slogan that's attached to the brand is for the rest of your life, and it's a double meaning because it is for the rest of your life. Because I think that when you're wrapped in one of these great big sweaters, it feels
Mm-hmm.
great. And the double meaning of for the rest of your life is because if you buy one of our sweaters, we mend it forever
Mm-hmm.
for free. So you don't have to worry about it becoming broken because we mend it. You also get enough stuff to wash it for about 14 years actually, because you don't need to wash merino wool very often, between 2 and 4 times a year. And the very special stuff that we give you to wash it lasts for 28 washes.
Mm-hmm.
It's all just trying to build something interesting, rather
Yeah.
than so much of today's clothing just gets not worn or bloody thrown away.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because you were like, it's part of Always Wear Red, isn't it? And I think I've been listening one of your podcasts, and and on that there was a guy with a red umbrella past the pub you were waiting for your wife or something like that. And that
Yeah, I
red
was right. Yeah.
umbrella, that's just where you could get your where you got your inspiration from.
Well, it was, and
And
perhaps even more dramatically, for want of a better word than that, it was on Valentine's Day. So it was
oh
February the
yeah.
14th. It was February the 14th, 2015. I was stood in a bar in town waiting for Lisa. And yeah, a guy walked past. It was a grey day, a grey
Mm-hmm.
February day, and a guy did walk past with a red umbrella, and he caught my eye, and he caught the eyes of many people in the bar. And that was a time when I just closed the businesses down. I knew I wanted to work in the creation of a clothing brand, but I didn't know anything about what I wanted to do. And the world has
Mm-hmm.
enough fashion brands, it really does. 73% of all clothing ever made gets burnt or buried within about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
80% of all clothing bought by people doesn't get worn. 30% of all clothing made globally never reaches a consumer. And I'm sub there thinking, how can I create a clothing brand that's distinctive, that's special in some way? And one of the pillars of the brand is the colour red. Because the reason I and many people in the bar saw this guy was because the colour red is the colour that the human eye sees first. It appears
Mm-hmm.
closer to the human eye than any other colour because it's got the longest wavelength. So everything we do has got the colour red in it. It either is the colour red or it's the dominant colour, because I just like that because you get the edge.
Mm-hmm. And then I
If you
was
don't like red, then
thinking,
we're no good to you.
yeah, and I was thinking if that umbrella wasn't red, it might have been green or blue.
Well, well, strangely, because of
Would
the
that
physiology.
been make it always
No,
wear blue?
because
No?
no, but the reason is because the physiology of the colour,
Mm-hmm.
the actual way the human eye reacts to it, it made people look. So it was visible. So if it
Mm-hmm.
was a different colour, almost certainly it wouldn't have happened. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the fact that it was an umbrella. It wasn't the fact that it was raining. It was the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it was red. It wasn't the
Yeah.
fact that it was a colour. It was the fact that it was red. Because that's the effect that red has.
Yeah. And then you didn't even just, okay, red it is. You just didn't even leave it like that. You went further to meet a, was it professor or at the university who studies red, the color red?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
So
met a
like,
guy.
mm-hmm.
He did a PhD on the colour red,
Mm-hmm.
and we chatted for little bits of time about It's the most British of colours, because when people are asked about, what's Britishness, three of the top five things that they mention are red, which are currently pillar boxes, phone boxes, and buses. This will change as people get older, I'm sure, but it's considered to be a very British colour.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, it's the colour the human eye sees first, and it's also the colour of confidence, and it affects people's perception of you more significantly than any other colour. And the strange thing is, if we look for papers or PhDs that have been written on colour, I found more on the colour red and the effect on how that affects people's relationships than any other colour. There's more written about the colour red because people tend to write about extremes, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
colour with the longest wavelength. So
Yeah.
that interested me. It's the most interesting of colours as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't, not clearly that's not the whole story of why I'm doing it. It's just part of the story.
Yeah. The thing I'm fascinated by what you're doing is it's not you just don't, okay, there is a red umbrella, I would like to do this red. You just go further and further. You do proper research and take it, you go into research and then you pick up loads of different things. It's not just like kind of emotional thing. You just do a proper work on it. Is it because
It's the
you're
every
Is it because you've been in this Brandon and all other experiences you've been through? Is that why you are like that, or?
No, it's about thoroughness really, and
Mhm.
insecurity probably, because if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it exceptionally or not at all.
Mhm.
And that I don't see the point in doing something in a mediocre way, something that you're not proud of, something that's not, if it's challenged from the
Mhm.
north or the south or the east or the west, I wanted to be able to defend it properly. So, for
Mhm.
example, if I went into a clothing brand and I didn't
Mhm.
understand, if someone asked me, it's a beautiful cashmere solution, Mike. It's a beautiful cashmere piece. Who made it? When was it made? Were children involved in the making of it? What is the sustainability credentials of the maker and of the
Mhm.
materials? I wanted to answer knowledgeably about every single thing because it's either complete. I often have this annoying phrase with people that I've employed and teams that I've built, which is 99% done is 100% not done. It's either 100% or nothing. So what is the, fast fashion is one thing, but you can make a lot of money in fast fashion. But if you peer over in a dark corner of certain aspects of fast fashion and it's a crappy story, then I'm not interested. The whole thing falls down. So I wanted it to be, and I insist on it being exceptional in every way, or else I'm not interested. Incidentally, I'm far from perfect, so I'll miss
Mhm.
things. But then I
Yeah.
go back and I get gutted and I go back and mend it because I'm constantly improving.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, and I fall in love with things and I fall out of love with things because, with all due respect to them, I've worked with the best knitters in the whole of the United Kingdom, and the knitters in the United Kingdom are considered by many to be the best knitters in the world. So Johnsons of Elgin, William Lockie, amazing businesses, amazing people. Johnsons of Elgin turns over 90 million quid, but it
Mhm.
wasn't quite right for me because I mentioned the word romance before. Knitting, for me, a 51-year-old man sat here talking about knitting, the
Mhm.
romance and the beauty of a piece of work coming alive in someone's hands, and many of our knitters are male as well as female,
Mhm.
is much more interesting to me than pressing a button on a machine. So that's what I do. So the more I found out, sometimes would lead me to leave the path I was on. If I wanted a perfect sweater that was knitted in exactly the same way every single time, I wouldn't choose hand knitting.
Mhm.
But that isn't what I want, so I don't choose hand. So I don't choose, automated machine knitting. I do it in the way that I want to, because I've got a lot of respect for the artisanal and the creative and the craftsmanship of one person knitting one thing.
Mhm.
And you don't find many brands that just stay in the hand knitting niche for all the reasons that they don't go there. I go there because
Mhm.
it's very challenging.
Do the customers, the people who's buying the jumpers, do they get information about who's knitted that jumpers?
No one's bought a jumper yet because they're not for sale yet.
All right,
And they
okay.
and they won't be for sale until next year. And that's a
Uh-huh,
good question. I'm not sure what we're going to do. A lot of it is the key to the success of Always Wear Red from a commercial perspective.
uh-huh,
And by the way, I'll make a slightly arrogant remark about success in just a moment with regards to the quality of the product. But with regards to commercial success, which fundamentally I suppose is measured by how many we sell, I've basically got to get people to fall in love with the process as much as the product. If I
mm-hmm,
don't do that, then I'll fail commercially. But if I set my goal, which I have, of creating the best hand knitted jumper possible, I can achieve that. If no one buys something, I've still won. Commercially, it's rubbish, but I know how to create the greatest hand knitted jumper because I know where the greatest hand knitters are. I know where the greatest merino wool is. I know it takes 4 to 6 weeks from beginning to end. I
mm-hmm,
know that inside each jumper there'll be an original piece of artwork that I commissioned. I
mm-hmm,
know that before independently created labels, all for a very specific reason. I know that you only need to wash it twice a year, which saves so much time and money and water. So I know what boxes to tick. So all I've got to do now I've worked that out is tick those boxes. They're going to be bloody expensive, and that's the problem. I'm not sure exactly how much they're going to cost, but it'll be a lot, and it'll be a barrier to many. But that's okay because they're not for everybody. Because no brand is for everybody. I'm not trying to be for everybody.
yes. I totally get that. Ian's just reminded me that you wore the Always Red jumper at the Power of You.
I did, and it was warm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm,
But yeah, that was a prototype, and we're going through sizing at the moment because we're trying to work out. Well, we've done it now. Actually, we've mapped female sizes on top of male sizes, and you were kind enough to help us with that. And we're nearly
mm-hmm,
there, but it's because guys generally have squarer shoulders than women do, and there are certain other proportional differences between men and women, and bumpy bits and non-bumpy bits, of course. So we've worked out how to knit something which it looks amazing on a female and on a male, because in different gender relationships as well as same-sex relationships, I want people to nick the sweater from each other. I want him to nick it from her, or her to nick it from him, or him to nick it from him. So I
uh-huh,
have to get the sizing right. So the reason I wore that one on that day was to try and work out how that size actually felt on me. The
uh-huh.
first shape we've done is a big shape. The second shape will be different, and the third shape, we're doing 2 more shapes in 2020. They'll all be different shapes for different kind of ways to wear them. But the first one, as I've mentioned, it's just a massive jumper. It's that jumper that hugs you. So if you need a hug, just put your jumper on.
Yeah, and just thinking back because you cover lots of this branding stuff on your 50 odd blogs,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and sometimes it feels like it's a lesson in a very practical way,
yeah.
picking up and learning things from there as well.
I hope that they're little lessons, not big lessons, just
Yeah,
little lessons.
yeah,
Because when I try and write something, I try and create things with a read time of between 30 seconds and 2 minutes at the most,
mm-hmm,
and normally around 60 seconds actually. And things that you can kind of go, ah, cool, I understand why that doesn't work, or I understand why that does work. On the
mm-hmm,
subject of brand communication, which I think is the subject you just brought up.
mm-hmm.
Because brand communication is different than marketing, and that's different than design. And in my opinion and experience, there are lots of people who are pretty good at marketing. There are very few people who are very good at brand.
Okay. Just like going back because you are doing the jumpers, but from Northumbria University you graduated there, and then your degree was about furniture making, or was it a furniture design?
You're right. It was both of
Nothing
those
to do
things.
with
It
clothing,
was
wasn't it?
no, no. But
How it's
you know,
evolved.
has it evolved? I don't know if it has evolved. The connecting theme between everything is creativity, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity, I sometimes get ahead of myself on some things, and I'm behind myself on some things. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I don't think I was being creative for years. I was working in the creative industries, and as I mentioned before, I was running creative teams, so I wasn't being creative. And when I was 18, 19, 20, creating furniture, I wasn't brave enough, I wasn't mature enough. I was too immature to be. I've written a story recently which hasn't been published yet, which is about what creativity feels like. And I think creativity should feel like free falling with no constraints and no restraints. And there were always restraints for me at university, and there shouldn't have been. I was perhaps too worried about what other people would think. And that's one of the most dangerous of the constraints, I think, with regards to in the context of creativity. But yeah, I mean, the evolution, which was back to your question, I don't know that there's been an evolution from me designing furniture in 1990 to me
Mm-hmm.
designing clothing in 2016, 17, 18, 19. An evolution that's taken place, for example, when I've been doing clothing, is trying to understand how to build a bloody collection. Because I could design a single piece of clothing, but I was awful at creating a collection at the beginning. It was like they were all beautiful individual pieces of clothing, but they didn't
Mm-hmm.
function. They didn't function in the way I wanted them to as a collection. The new Always Wear Red is clearly a collection. So that's an example of how my design knowledge and insight had to evolve. I had to learn new skills under the umbrella of designing.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me sniffing.
So, yeah, because like doing all these things, different branding and design and
Yeah,
creativity, you have to make lots of decisions.
yeah.
How, what's your advice on, not advice, like how do you make your decisions? Is it quick
The be-
process? Do you have like gut instinct or do you research or?
it's almost always gut instinct. You almost,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a reasonably bright person,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what that means, I don't know what else to say. If you're a reasonably bright person, almost all the time you know what to do, and that's almost always enough. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you mess it up 3 times out of 10 or 4 times out of 10, that's fine. So with regards to your question about decision making, I generally make decisions really, really quickly and just act really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Because anybody who's, for example, fearful about someone pinching their idea, in my opinion, doesn't have enough ideas. Just have a better one. Or implement your idea better than they implement your idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that for me. Just do it well. You know what doing it well is. And we know what doing things right feels like. And we know what cutting corners feels like. So if you cut corners, you're going to get found out. And you deserve that anyway, you know. If you do things amazingly, sometimes you fail. But don't let the failure be down to you. Just make all the right decisions to do things amazingly well, incredibly well, or don't do it at all. And if you don't know what amazingly well is, go to a world where you do understand what exceptional means. Because only then can you win, or else you'll be an also ran. But try and find out where you are so you have that confidence to do things and see things through to the end. The only other bit I'll layer on top of that is, and this is a way that you can make a mistake that I made, which going all in and really, really going for it is good advice,
Mm-hmm.
but it's got an asterisk. And the asterisk for me is hedge a little bit, because when all I did was always wear red, there was too much
Mm-hmm.
pressure on always wear red. There was
Right.
too much pressure on always, because I started wanting always wear red to succeed commercially far more than it naturally was going to. So I started to dislike it, I started to make bad decisions, and I started to be grumpy about it and with scenarios and probably people that I just shouldn't have been. But I had to have the self-awareness to see that. So I spend my time across 3 things now: publishing, with 50 odd, helping other brands to become more profitable, to make more money and to last longer, because I'm good at that. That's what I do inside Angelfish. And Always Wear Red is a young brand. I'm relaunching it next year from scratch, but that's what I must do. So my point there is, to come back to your question about decision making, it's easier for me to make decisions when I take the pressure off myself, but I have to develop strategies to take the pressure off myself. And my answer, in short, was hedging, working across 3 potential income streams so I can make better decisions.
How, like when you're talking about like decision making, and you said pretty quick, is
Yeah.
that, how quick is that pretty quick? Obviously, it
Well, instant.
depends. Yeah.
It depends on what the decision is, but sometimes within the second.
Mm-hmm.
With the way that we're talking, interestingly, with the way that we're talking about, I mean, here's an example. The way that we're talking about Always Wear Red. Always Wear Red, as you know, I think I've split in half. We've got Always Wear Red the early years, which is some of the best product that can ever be made across several categories.
Yeah.
And then the new Always Wear Red, which is jumpers only. Now, something that doesn't sit well with me at all is reducing the prices of the products that I've invested a lot of time and money and I know can't be beaten. But the reason I've reduced the prices is because they are very expensive. I want people to wear them and I want the money that comes in to fund the new chapter. But on the subject of quick decision making, I said to the guys in the team today, I said, our social media narrative over the last 10-ish days has been all about the ability for people to get exceptional world-class product at a much reduced prices. The decision I made today was, from today, we don't talk about prices anymore because we're not a price-driven brand. I basically said to anyone who's listening, look, we're dropping all the prices by as much as 80%. The average is about 55%, in fact, just to get the stuff out there because I want people to wear it, because when they see it, they keep it. I mean, this is the truth. What I'm about to say is true. We've had one thing returned ever. We've sold hundreds and hundreds of units, but we've never had anything returned apart from one thing. And it was a guy who rang me personally. He said, I'm really sorry, I'm going to send a Baker Boy cap back because it doesn't suit me. And he was apologizing to me. So he didn't even send it back because he didn't, it wasn't good enough. So we've had a 0% returns rate. So I just thought, get the stuff out there. But to come back to your question about decision making, from tomorrow, or it may not kick in for 2 or 3 days, but from the next 2 or 3 days, everything we do on social media will be about quality and the ability to access exceptional product quickly and easily from one of the best brands in the world across
And it's the last
these few
bit.
categories.
There won't be any more. It's like some things are
Well,
only 2, 3, like there's only
that's
few
right.
left.
Yeah, most things are under 5 of them left now. So that's a great example, Suki, of we're going to change the messaging, not from it's cheaper than it was to if you want to get somebody something amazing this Christmas that no one else has got, that you know can't be beaten and has never been returned, buy some of this bloody stuff. Because, it's very, I think I can say this, one of our customers bought one of our flat caps for her dad. And her dad is 80, right? And I can tell you this. She said, I'm going to tell him everything about the cap, apart from what it cost, because it might bloody kill him, because they're bloody expensive. But I'll tell you the next chapter of the story. Because this amazing gentleman loves this cap so much, she came back to me and she said, I want to buy another one, because if he lost it, he'd be gutted. So she's bought 2 identical caps. But what I said to her was, I'm going to sell you the second cap, not at the price it is now, but I'm going to sell it at the lowest projected drop that we're going to sell it at. Because we're a nice company and I didn't want her to see that we dropped the price. But what I'm talking to you about here is the relationship we have with the people who buy our stuff. Because it's very important. Because, it's the most flattering thing in the world. If you get an idea in your head, you turn it into a product, and then someone pays between 140 and 190 quid for a flat cap, because that's what they used to be. At the moment, there's 40% off them, so they're considerably less. But as you've said, there's only 2 or 3 of them left, so they will get sold. we're just going to, going back to your point about decision making, I've decided that we're going to stop harping on about the fact that they're a much more accessible price point and say, look, if you want one, bloody buy one, because they're going to run out, you know, because
Yes,
they are. They're going to,
yes,
because they are.
they will definitely. And based on the decision, because I know that people make decisions, and then it's making decision is quite easy, but it's 100% commitment. Then to
Yeah,
make things
yeah,
successful, you need to have resilience,
yeah, yeah.
and then you have to take full responsibility of your decision making,
Yeah, you do.
all the
I don't think,
actions.
yeah, without a doubt. Because if you don't, then you kind of get found out. But I think you also have to have the balls and the confidence and the nous to say, this thing that I was doing wasn't
Hmm.
right, but this next thing I'm going to do is a variant of that, perhaps, or just stop doing it and do something else. Because if it
Hmm.
doesn't feel right, don't do it. Don't do it. You know, I've got a lot of respect for people who stop. There's no shame in stopping, which isn't the opposite of what you've said, which is, you know, it would be stupid if you did a thing and found that it just wasn't working. To keep doing it would be a stupid thing to do.
Really,
But
because
interestingly,
like,
you asked me to.
okay,
Well, the
because
reason is because some people don't like to be seen to fail.
hmm
If you don't like to be seen to fail, you might think I'm going to keep doing this thing so that my mates think I'm doing okay. When really, you know it from the inside, and it's just crap. It just doesn't work. So stop it and have the balls to say, oh, it doesn't work.
but if you really do believe in your what you're doing,
Yeah,
and then we just don't know, there might be just left like 1 or 2 steps, or like 2 weeks or 2 months, that it would
yeah,
just all kind of have at that tipping point or whatever.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the best example, yeah, there is
But then if
that.
you just stop, and then that's giving up, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's no shame in that. If all things considered, it makes no sense for you to carry on.
Hmm.
Because when you know something from the inside, it's absolutely stupid. Some people create jobs for themselves which don't make any commercial sense and are very unlikely to make money, but they still do it just to be seen to be doing that thing because they're not brave enough to say, I really fucked this up. I made a really bad decision at the A of the alphabet. It was really bad. And a lot of the reasons why this happens, Suki, is because there's a difference between what I've written about in the little book I did called A Brand, and I can't
Yeah.
remember the number, but basically it's a difference between, it's in there, it's a difference between the lived reality and internal pride. Internal pride can keep a person going on a thing which is never going to work. So just stop it. But of course, you could, as you said, you could stop it, and then you know someone else could do it. But it's the same, you know. Put your numbers on the lottery and keep doing it. But next week, it just, you know, there's a bigger chance that you're going to die before. Um, there's a bigger chance you're going to die before that. I can't remember the quote, so I won't bother with it. But
Hmm.
you're not going to win. It's hugely unlikely you're going to win. That was what someone was saying today. If you're in your, I think virtually any age, it's a bad quote this because it's not well researched or
Hmm.
remembered, but virtually any age, you're going to die. Odds are you're going to die before you win the lottery, you
Hmm.
know? So that's how unlikely it is, but we still put money on the lottery. It makes no real sense. And sometimes in business, you've got to work out what doesn't make sense. A really great example in my experience is, do you know of or do you remember Kodak, the
Hmm.
photography brand?
Yeah.
Okay, so back in the day, what they stood for was hugely important. What they
Hmm.
stood for was the guardian of your memories based on a single promise, which was truly lifelike colour. Now I'm looking down the lens going, we will be the guardian of your memories. We stand
Hmm.
for truly lifelike colour. In the 70s and the 60s, that was hugely valuable. They thought it was hugely valuable in the 80s and the 90s, but it wasn't. But they didn't change because the internal pride wouldn't let them, and they went bust. That's an example of internal pride trumping the lived reality in a world that just didn't give a toss because colour became commonplace and we expected it. It was the new norm. It wasn't special anymore. Kodak should have moved into something special, and
Hmm.
something special at the time was digital. They had an opportunity and they were embedded enough in the photography market at that time to stand for digital, but they chose the wrong strategy. They chose to stand for truly lifelike colour in a room, in a world that did not give a toss about truly lifelike colour, but they didn't admit it to themselves. If you're doing something and it feels like it's failing, admit it to yourself is all I'm saying. That said, you asked me for a quote, and the quote that I would replace whatever I said with, because I can't remember what I said, even though I'll live by it, whatever it was, I would actually replace it these days with keep moving forward. And that's based on resilience. If I had to give anybody advice in business, it would definitely be keep moving forward. But nothing is an absolute. It's not keep moving forward even if you're losing money and you can clearly see that you're going to continue to lose money for the rest of your effing life. That's not what I mean. But be resilient enough to keep moving forward. If you truly believe and you truly can sense and see and have planned for success, however you'd want to define success. There's loads of contradiction and all that, and I apologise, but that's just what I think.
Yeah, because, okay, like people's passion and being you as well, and like lived reality. And if you are, it's just the question is, because if I would like to do something really, really well, but then
Yeah,
the lived reality is not where I then want to be. So I need to balance, find out the better way to approach the customers and stuff.
absolutely.
And then would you compromise who you are to satisfy
No,
customers' needs? Or
no,
do
but
you
you know
just
the
wait? Do you just wait? And then if the customers won't come to you, so would you just, and it's going to be failure. You have to give up your passion because the
it's
customers are
inter-
not there.
this kind of subject we've brought into the room, with respect, isn't a subject in my mind. It's not
Mm-hmm,
even real. It's not
mm-hmm,
even real, because people look for a binary situation, and
mm-hmm,
I have to say that individuals who fall into this, they're looking for a way out. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. If you do want to do it, do it. If you
mm-hmm,
want to do it, you will find a way. It's not
mm-hmm.
called compromise when you change things to match the requirements of a market. It's not called compromise because compromise is framing it as potentially less good.
Mm-hmm.
It's called refining. It's called refine. It's not called compromise. But
Right.
those two words are neighbours of each other. But
Mm-hmm,
incidentally, you wouldn't refine it against your values as a human being or what
mm-hmm,
you believe to be true.
mm-hmm,
My jumpers will sell much better
mm-hmm,
if I had them knitted by a certain age of person in a certain country.
mm-hmm,
The actual making fee would be just under a third of what I pay.
mm-hmm.
But I'm not driven by price point. So
Yeah.
if a customer, because the thing is, we oversimplify if we say, for example, I'm not quoting you,
Mm-hmm,
even though it was kind of what you brought into the conversation, and I understand why.
mm-hmm,
If customers don't want this, that, or the other, we can't say all customers. If a certain type of customer doesn't want to pay between 500 quid and 1,000 quid for a
mm-hmm,
jumper that tells a story of them that they have for the rest of their lives, when
mm-hmm,
actually if they went to look at the jumpers in their wardrobe, they'll have spent ever such a lot more on jumpers that they don't flipping wear.
mm-hmm.
But if they're more interested in buying, the actual act of buying, the transactional giving money to someone to get a jumper for 50 quid, go and do
Mm-hmm.
that. But if you actually want something that's going to age with you, then buy one of ours. So the reason why I'm being slightly dismissive of the question is because
Mm-hmm.
there are different kinds of consumer,
Mm-hmm.
and it's finding your consumer, which is obviously key to the process.
Yeah. Okay. But the question I was going to link back
Yeah,
was it was not about finding the consumer,
yeah,
right? And it was more about how to, because you said if you try and then you understand that it's not going to work,
yeah.
just say no and then give up. Not
No,
really
that
give
is
up, just
no.
stop.
That's
Like there
not
is
that's
no shame, just like admitting it's wrong approach.
that's right. But we're
But
connecting.
then, mhm,
We're connecting things that we shouldn't be connecting. I'm
right,
not
okay.
saying, for example, I mean, if you're going to create some, I mean, I'll tell you this now, I'm not, it's really interesting. I'm creating what I believe is the greatest hand knitted jumper that can be made for every single reason that I can think of.
Mhm.
If there are people who respect that process
Mhm.
and are prepared to pay what I need to be paid to make commercial sense of it, to allow it to grow and sustain, they will buy it. And if they don't, they won't.
Um,
I sense that those people exist, not least because, to be frank, a handful of people had said, yes, I'll buy one at that price point. So
yeah,
I
because
know that they'll buy it.
yeah, because
Uh,
I'm just yeah, it's I was just thinking about more my side because like I have like no I have like I'm not talking about jumpers because that's just absolutely amazing thing. Because I'm thinking like I would like to organize lots of events, and I got this idea, but then I don't know if the customers are not ready. Then am I right to just go, just be blind and go forward doing it?
no.
And just, but like that's me. I would like to do it, and
Well,
I
do it
just
then.
don't know. And that was just a
Well, if you
question.
don't
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it's not, with respect, it's not a real question, because it's the kind of question, and I'm going to keep it hypothetical. It's the kind of question that the kind of person who asks that kind of question is the person who wants someone to come and solve the problem for them, or to come and
Mm-hmm.
save them from themselves, or to come and give them the answer. So that's the kind of person who doesn't actually want to do it. If you want to do it, you will find an effing way. That's it. It's not, it's a very direct. If you want to do it, you will find a way.
Mm-hmm.
The idea, by the way, if you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, because generally businesses are trying to solve problems, or fill gaps, or
Mm-hmm.
contribute to the self-actualization of a human being, to make them feel a certain way, to make them feel this or that. If you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, or fulfill a need, then of course you're going to fail. If we define failure by zero sales. And incidentally, you know, we watch Dragon's Den on the telly. That's just one way of defining business. Another way is the creation of something amazing. If Patagonia stood in front of, the history of Patagonia is a fascinating story. If we read about how that was developed over many decades now, the most annoying thing that the founder, I've not got his book here, what's he
Mm-hmm.
called? The most annoying thing for the founder these days is that he turns over $1 billion. He doesn't, it really annoys him because it bugs him because it causes problems. It causes some things that he set up the brand to solve, you
Mm-hmm.
know, negative effects on the, you know, on the climate, you know, that climate change. So it's really strange how we define success. But
Mm-hmm.
let it not be a simple conversation about how can I be sure? Because the only true answer is you never ever can.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing I'll bolt onto that is your idea is either somewhere near sensible or just bloody stupid. Or the same as a load of other people are doing, then it's bloody boring. And if you're going to start up a business plan called It's Just Bloody Boring, unless you're Elon Musk, don't do it. You'll bore yourself. The most important question to ask yourself about this is very simple, which is what is the change you're trying to make? All businesses should answer that question first. What is the change you're trying to make? I'll stop sticking things up my nose at some point. But if you can't answer what's the change you're trying to make, why on earth should I be interested? I'm going to be yet another coffee shop. Okay. If it's an area that's undersupplied and the demand is exceeding supply, fine. But that wouldn't get me out of bed in the morning. I want to do something that's making a change, that's either making individuals' lives better or easier, or contributing to the greater good. With Angelfish, I've decided recently on the subject of making decisions, in the blink of an eye, I decided that all new clients we take on must be contributive. And what I mean by that is they have to understand how their businesses are contributing to the greater good. And if they don't understand that and they go, oh, we just want to sell these, I'll go and see some other bugger then, because that's boring,
Mm-hmm.
flogging stuff. Not interested.
Okay. It's been really eye-opening and excellent interview. Thanks very much for your time, Michael. And
Is it time to go?
yeah, my very last question, if you don't
Yeah.
mind. What's the something that no one would guess about you?
Um, I once drove to work naked.
Say that again.
I once drove to work naked.
How far was it?
It was about 12 miles, and there was a cameraman in the back filming it. And then me and the whole team spent the day at work naked on a Friday.
Was it for charity?
No, it was for a television program in 2009 called The Naked Office, and it was on Virgin One.
Oh, wow. That must be
So if you're
very good
feeling
fun.
particularly brave, go to YouTube.
Uh-huh.
The company was called One Best Way,
Uh-huh.
The Naked Office, and you'll never speak to me again.
Okay.
And never come in here on a Friday unless you're naked.
Oh, it's not like the Friday's the office naked day.
Naked Friday.
Is it even now?
Yeah, every Friday.
Like naked naked?
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Oh.
lying. I'm lying. It was one Friday, and it was part of a television program. You look scared.
No, it's just intriguing because
You
I've
can
been in
take
your
your
office
clothes off.
once.
It wasn't a Friday, wasn't was it?
No, it was Tuesday, I think.
Okay, there you go. Never come on a Friday. We've got a
Right,
meeting in. I think we've got a meeting booked, and it's not a Friday, but I'm going to move it to a Friday and see if you turn up.
right. Okie doke. Thanks so much for your time, and I'm
Thank
sure
you.
I'll be watching it back again and again. So,
What?
as
Okay,
always,
cool.
I'll learn loads from it.
Wow,
Thanks very much.
you're very kind. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.
Farewell.
And thank you for everyone joining as well. Thank you. Bye.